Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Trinity United Church in lovely downtown Gravenhurst. So now I have a dilemma this morning because I'm so used to looking up at the balcony at that little green dot that I have actual live people here this morning. So now I have to figure out who I'm supposed to look at while I'm talking. So I'll be like this, and so I'll try and look at the right people. So we decided to open up this morning. So we have some folks who've come out to church to join us. We taped off the pews. We're keeping our 6-foot social distancing, and everybody came in the back, and it's going to leave out the front, or one of those things. Everybody uses sanitizer, and we're going to just stay in our places. So our typical response on Sunday mornings is we get up and have a greeting time. We're not going to do that, obviously. But if you want to turn around and wave at each other, you're welcome to do that. As long as you stay your distance, don't move, wave to the camera. And it's Father's Day today, so happy Father's Day to any fathers who are here this morning. It was a nice week for me. I actually saw my mother, saw my Aunt Shirley, saw my grandkids and my daughter. So I had a good week in terms of family. So I want to say hi to my mom, and to my Aunt Shirley, and to my Auntie Carolyn, and all my friends in Muscatawbet Harbor. So my Uncle Harold down there gives me a hard time because my aunt has convinced the neighbors now that they have to watch our church service from Gravenhurst down in Muscatawbet Harbor in Nova Scotia. So we have an auxiliary congregation down there now. So I just want to say hi to all our friends in Muscatawbet Harbor. So it is Father's Day, and I'll talk a little bit about that this morning in our church service and the sermon. But I do want to say thanks for coming out this morning. I hope it feels comfortable and secure, and we'll try and do our best to make it that way. The only caveat I think this morning we should attend to is we're not supposed to sing, but if you're going to sing, just stay seated and put your mask on, or keep it on, all right? Which I don't know how that's going to work. Because I don't know about you guys, my glasses fog up as soon as I even start to talk. But we'll try that, okay, Dave? We'll see. You don't have to. Yeah. Because that'd sound weird, right? Yeah, exactly. Something off the Muppets or something. Dave's singing with his mask on. But you're far enough away, I think you're safe. So we'll try that. We'll just see how it goes this morning. But welcome, and we're happy to have you here. So the service this morning, the theme is private spaces. A couple of quotes. Whenever I think of men and Father's Day, one of the themes that always comes to mind is the idea of people never growing up. Because I think that's something that men do very poorly, is growing up. So I found this quote by Mary Angelou, and I thought it was quite interesting. She says, "Most people don't grow up. It's too damn difficult. What happens is most people get older. That's the truth of it. They honor their credit cards, they find parking spaces, they marry, they have the nerve to have children, but they don't grow up." Cole Sprouse, American writer, "Going to college made me realize that you have to have real spaces of privacy, and you have to establish those early." And of course, the American author John Updike. "The inner spaces that a good story lets us enter are the old apartments of religion." I have no idea what that means, but I just like the sound of it. So you might want to ponder on that one later on. So anyway, our opening prayer, I think you have it up there. You should have it. Let us pray together. This is a prayer by St. Patrick, written around the 5th century. "May the strength of God pilot us. May the power of God preserve us. May the wisdom of God instruct us. May the hand of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. May the shield of God defend us. May the host of God guard us against the snares of evil and the temptations of the world. May Christ be with us, Christ before us, Christ in us, Christ over us. May our salvation, O God, be always ours this day and forevermore. Amen." So we're going to sing "This is God's Wondrous World," but of course Dan picked it because the original title is "This is My Father's World." So if you get stuck on the old words, just sing the old words if you want. So
God's wondrous world, and to my listening ears all nature sings, and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is God's wondrous world. I rest me in the thought of the rocks and trees, of skies and seas, God's hand the wonders wrought. This is God's wondrous world. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is God's wondrous world. God shines in all that's fair, in the rustling grass or the mountain pass, God's voice speaks everywhere. This is God's wondrous world. Oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is God's wondrous world. Why should my heart be sad? Let voices sing, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let earth be glad. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name.
From self-righteousness that will not compromise, and from selfishness that gains from the manipulation of others, deliver us, O God. From the lust for power or money or power that drives to kill, deliver us, O God. From the arrogance and thoughtlessness that abuses your good creation, deliver us, O God. From trusting in the weapons of war and mistrusting the counsels of peace, deliver us, O God. From hearing, believing, and speaking lies about other nations, deliver us, O God. From suspicions and fears that stand in the way of reconciliation, deliver us, O God. From words and deeds that encourage discord, perpetuate racist assumptions, sexist stereotypes, and classist attitudes, from everything that contributes to oppression, deliver us, O God. Amen. No matter where we are, God is there. No matter what we have done, God forgives. No matter our reluctance to accept God, God has accepted us. with that assurance, receive forgiveness and live in fullness and in hope.
Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life. Bless the Lord, my soul, and bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, my soul, who leads me into life.
So Courtney's going to read this morning from Gospel of Matthew, chapter 10, verses 24 to 29. I think it's probably one of the most complicated passages in the New Testament. It rarely ever gets preached upon, I suspect because it's contradictory. It has a lovely passage about never be afraid. It's got some very nice instructions about how to get along with each other. And then it's got a passage about you have to love Jesus more than your parents, and that I've come to break families up, not to put them together, all in the same 10 verses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that during the sermon. I won't confuse you with it before she reads it. I have a feeling it was probably one of the parts of Matthew where he was trying to not lose bits and pieces of what he heard Jesus say and just put them in a passage because he couldn't figure where else to put them. But I'm going to let that go for now. I talked about this in the middle of the winter. There are a bunch of Renaissance paintings, and I don't know where their inspiration comes from, where there are little angels whispering into Matthew's ear. And there's probably 10 or 12 of them. They're all different. Some of them are like this, where Matthew's portrayed as sort of an old frightened man, and the angel is above telling him. In other paintings, the angel is a little cherub who's sitting on the bench pointing out what he should be writing. And another one, she's whispering in his ear. They're very fascinating, and if you have an opportunity to go online, look them up, because they're all so different, and I still cannot find what the inspiration is for the paintings. And so if anybody ever finds out, please let me know. I would love to know where these have come from. So I just want to remind you, it's only Matthew that this happens to. None of the other gospel writers have this. So again, one of the things in the passage, which is fascinating, is the little inclination. If you want to go to the next one, Courtney.
That would be Elis.
Elis is good. Okay, wrong person here. Okay, so this is a good one and a bad one. So in this passage, Matthew quotes Jesus as saying that we are more valuable than thousands of little sparrows that you can buy in the market. So if God knows, where the sparrows are, then how much more does God love you? Right? But right after that, the passage is, God knows the hairs on your head, which I've always found a very distressful image. Right? Because if you're valued by the number of hairs on your head, it has always made me feel kind of insecure as I get older, right? So I think it's a lot of little passages that don't mean a lot. That's what I'm saying. So there's one more here too, though. I found this, when you look up that particular passage, this part of Matthew, the whole section of those chapters, is basically around the idea of how to minister to anxious people. So I think, again, why lots of little tiny passages that are put together so people can find something for them in it that helps them out in anxious times, of which we are in. Thanks, Courtney.
A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill but the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. Do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it.
Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arms have bound the restless wave, who bade the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea. O Christ, whose voice the waters heard, and hushed their raging at thy word, who walked upon the foaming deep, and calm amid the storm did sleep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea. O Holy Spirit, who didst brood upon the chaos dark and rude, and bade its angry tumult cease, and gave for wild confusion peace. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea. O Trinity of love and power, all travelers guard in danger's hour, from rock and tempest, fire and foe, protect them wheresoever they go. Thus evermore shall rise to thee glad hymns of praise from land and sea.
Well, folks, you may not know it from where you're sitting at home, but it's hot here in here this morning. So we're a little damp. So we'll rush through this as fast as we can today. So, it's Father's Day, so I just put a sermon together that I wanted to hear. So, I don't know if anybody else wants to hear it, but I'm going to enjoy it. So I hope you like it too. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Theme is the man cave. If you don't know what a man cave is, I will explain it later on. And some of you may know without knowing the title. Some of you may know it. If you're at home and you have a computer and you don't know it, look it up, but I'll get to it later on. So, I want to talk first of all about what Matthew was talking about, the thing that Courtney read this morning. So if we can go on to the next one there. Matthew's points. All right? So he made quite a few points in that little description that he gave. First of all, human beings are more valuable than other creatures. It's a theme you find that starts in the Bible in Genesis and goes all the way through the Bible. The idea that we are always more valuable than the rest of creation. According to the Judeo-Christian tradition, we are the penultimate of creation. Now, in later years, we've reduced that and say that we're co-created, but in the early Christian tradition, as well in the early Jewish tradition, we were the best. And we're always reminded of that in the scriptures. God creates us as the best. Second thing is we're known individually, right? So we're not a mass. God knows us. He knows, as I said, He knows the number of hairs on our head, right? We're more valuable than the birds in the air, right? He knows us as individuals. Interesting, in Matthew, he says, if you don't stand up for God, God won't stand up for you. Right? Which is an interesting thing because it's not often something we get taught or talk about in Christianity, right? We're like, God is always loving. So you got to question what's going on here for Matthew at this point while he's writing the gospel, because it's not a common message we hear from Jesus or about God. One of the things he said, life is difficult. Let's be ready, folks. It's difficult and it requires certain sacrifices of you. And he says, in his own way, families can be difficult places. Right? Families can cause hurt. Families are not always perfect. And then he says two of the things that I think is really, really interesting. One of them we use all the time. If you are willing to lose your life, that is, to give up on all the things that you want, you will find your life. Right? And we repeat that kind of thing all the time in Christianity. Right? The greatest sacrifice is self-sacrifice. Right? If you put others before yourself, you'll have a better life. We talk about those kinds of things. Matthew quotes Jesus very, very clearly here. To gain your life, you give up your life. And the last thing is that if you put God first, you will find yourself. So again, moving into that idea that God is somehow intrinsic to us. God is not out there, God's here. So we don't have to look for God out there, we look for God here. If we spend our whole lives chasing other dreams, we miss the God who's present to us all the time. So that's a lot of stuff in 10 verses, right? That's like the Reader's Digest version of the New Testament, right in Matthew. And it's one of the reasons the early church fathers liked Matthew's gospel the best. It's one of the reasons it's the first one put in the New Testament, because it was thought of as a Sunday school primer. It was for new Christians to read because Matthew's so direct. Do this, do that, believe this, think this. Right? Pretty straightforward. Unlike John, if you gave John's gospel to a new Christian, they'd be off smoking mushrooms and, in the desert somewhere, right? Matthew's pretty clear about you just do these things and be a good person. So Father's Day. Father's Day, I think, is fascinating, right? Mother's Day comes along every year in church. I always look out. There's all kinds of children with their parents, right, on Mother's Day in church. And I say, how many of you have come here today because your mother asked you to? And there's always people that put their hands up and say, yeah, I came because my mom asked me to come on Mother's Day. Father's Day, there is a vacuum of fathers in the church, right? Because Father's Day comes and mother or whoever says, what do you want to do today? And you want to go to church? And father says, no, I'd rather go play golf. Right? There is a different kind of system that works for mothers and fathers. And I always like the idea of what happens on Father's Day? What are the symbols of Father's Day? Screwdrivers and neckties. right? Power tools. I went to see my daughter and the grandkids yesterday. I got a Father's Day card. What does it have on it, huh? Right? A denim shirt, right? It's a denim card, right? With screwdrivers and wrenches. And you know why? Because for her birthday, I gave her a pair of Muskoka chairs. But I'm cheap, like most fathers, right? So I bought them in a kit, which I had to assemble. I did not realize I had to assemble them board by board. I thought maybe the back and the bottom would be together. And no. So when I gave them to her in their assembled fashion, I said, I have never done anything with as much love and cursing at the same time in my whole life. So I hope you enjoy them, right? So, I mean, Father's Day has those kinds of things. And then there are all these other stuff that you don't. Mother's Day, you give these flowery cards with all these like warm sentiments on them, right? You know, thank you for carrying me. Thank you for all the Father's Day. Go to the next one. Sure, let's start. So these are things you can buy to put on bottles of beer to give your father for Father's Day, right? This front one says, Happy Father's Day. And then it says, I might be the reason you drink. You would never give that to your mother, would you? Well, maybe. Okay, I don't want to know about your families. Okay. So, now this is, again, an interesting thing. In Judeo-Christian tradition, we think of God as being a parent, right? Like on Dan's able to find easily, well, not so much in the United Church, but hymns that have God as Father, right? Now, mostly in the United Church, we've edited those all out, and we only sing hymns that have God as parent in now, not as Father or Mother, right? But there are lots of hymns, God is Father. So we look at God as a parent. So you have to ask the question, does God get tired of us as children? Right? I found this. I thought this was great. This is some church somewhere doing a study in the book of Judges. God is great, people are crazy. Right? Does God sometimes get tired of us and our antics? I mean, if God turned on the news last night and listened to the Trump rally, God would think we are out of our minds, right? You can go to the rally, COVID-19 is over, but to get into the rally, you have to sign a waiver that if you get COVID-19, you can't sue anybody in the Republican Party. I mean, God must look at us and think, are you crazy? Did I bring you up like that? Right? So you make that connection between parents and their children. So I always love, again, with fathers, I always think this is great, right? So more and more fathers are staying at home, more and more fathers are looking after the children. This is a typical, I don't know if any of the dads here remember this stuff. Do you want to wipe your mouth with a napkin? No thanks, I have sleeves. All right, I watched my grandsons yesterday. I just love that. I don't know if you experienced this as a grandfather or grandmother, watching kids do stuff that you know what the consequence is going to be, and you don't have to say anything. Right? So they each had 3 little bottles. 2 of them had ginger ale, 1 of them had apple juice. Right? So that's a treat they kind of get when we show up sometimes. So the one little guy, what's he going to do? Shakes the bottle and then opens it. Right? And his mother's like, why did you shake the bottle? I watched the whole thing. Right? So that he tightens the bottle back up, wipes his face off, looks around. Watch the whole thing again, right? This time, gets himself right in the face. Now he's upset, right? I'm just watching. I'm like, do you know the definition of crazy? He's like, what? It's when you do the same thing, and each time you expect a different result. So then he sneaks off it again. I see him over like shaking. And I think, it's great. I don't have to clean it up. I can just enjoy that, right? One of the beautiful things about having grandchildren. So you go into the next, I like this one too. Kid on the sidewalk. My father pays a cheap allowance. right? He's bumming for money, and he looks at his father and he says, "You brought this on yourself, Dad." Like, how many of your kids, sorry, not trying to give you a hard time here. I don't know. Oh, you never got an allowance. Okay, so you should be that kid then. Okay, if you see Ellis out on the church steps afterwards, put a quarter in his cup, okay? The idea of how many of us, after we think we've done everything we're supposed to do, our kids still get mad at us, right? They still kind of like not happy with who we were, how we were, what we did. And I don't know about you folks. What was the manual when I had little kids? Dr. Spock, wasn't it? What? Right? Benjamin Spock, right? I mean, read that thing religiously. I mean, obviously it's all wrong, right? Kids seem to turn out reasonably well. I mean, there's a whole different set of books for this generation, right? But nobody knows how to bring up children, right? I mean, you have kids, like, you don't even have to take a license or a test, right, to have children. You just have them. At least when you're 16, you got to go and take driver's ed, right? Nothing for having kids, right? But you always pay the price, don't you? At some point or another, you pay the price. Just go one more. I just thought this was kind of good, too. "Hey, Dad, can I please borrow the car?" That was always my favorite, right? "Not until you get your hair cut." Right? "But Dad, Jesus had long hair." And the closing caption, "Yeah, but Jesus walked everywhere." I thought that was great. I mean, that just settles the whole discussion, doesn't it? Huh? Jesus walked everywhere. Oh my. I must admit, though, I miss those days. The problems just get more complicated as we get older. So the question is now, as parents, as males in particular, when there's too much going on and you're not sure what to do anymore. And I think this happens more often than not for men in particular. Men, if you look at the whole idea of men being hunter-gatherers, right, that's our primeval nature, we escape problems, right? We like to get away from problems. That's why things like hunting still happen and fishing, right? Because you can escape. You can justify those activities. I'm catching dinner, right? I'm doing something valuable. All the rest of them make no sense. Motorcycles and all that kind of stuff. That's just play, right? So men invented this thing called the man cave. It is the perfect escape. So this is not my man cave because that's too tidy. But it's the general idea of a man cave is that you take your garage, you put some kind of carpet in it, you put all your tools in, very shiny. You put a TV in, maybe a video game or two, and then you hang really interesting stuff up on the wall. Now the reason that see this guy has a nice couch facing that way, he's got a bar with stools in there, because if you have a man cave, you need other men. You can't just enjoy it by yourself. And your man cave has to be better than everybody else's man cave on the street. You see? So it's a really interesting. So you go there to escape your children and your problems or your issues. Right? Now, I didn't take mine because mine's embarrassing. It has 3 motorcycles in it, and I didn't want to show off. All right? But on the wall, I have a Prussian helmet and 2 suicide doors for a 1927 Chevy Coupe. See, you know what I mean? It's got that kind of stuff in it, right? You put old fly rods. I have a fencing sword. Things that men, then they don't have to talk about everyday life, right? You talk about ridiculous things, right? Great big dartboard, all that kind of stuff. But it's the idea that you can move away into your own little space, right? It's a retreat. So, speaking of fixing things, I don't know if this is a good thing to put in or not. I bought this t-shirt once after I'd been to my daughter's house a couple of times to fix stuff. And it says, "If Papa can't fix it, we're all screwed." I thought it was funny until one of my grandchildren said to me, "What does that mean, we're all screwed?" And my daughter looks at me and went, "Okay, bad idea. I won't do this again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wrong thing to wear." When we think about retreating from our children, which I think we all have at some point. I know I have. I read this quote by Carl Jung: "Children are educated by what the grown-up is and not by his talk." And I think it's one of the reasons that as parents we struggle with how our children are doing in life, how they're feeling, where they're going, what their values are, is because our hope is they would have received something from us that was good, that was positive. And we worry about the way they are going to navigate through life. And of course, we've been full of talk. I don't know about you, I talk for a living, right? That's what I do, right? But that doesn't make any impact on my children. So my worry is, what have I done? How have I been in terms of the way they respond in the world? And when I see them go off track or get a bit lost, like we all do, especially when they have children and they're trying to navigate that, then I worry, is their foundation secure? Did I give them enough? Did I know enough? Did I know enough myself in those times? And so then you call into question things, so what's at play in all of this? What's at play? And I think it comes back to that part in the end of Matthew where Matthew says, and he quotes Jesus, we have to lose a bit of ourselves in order to find ourselves. And it's in the losing, the insecurity, the not knowing if you've done all the right things, it's in that giving that you realize there's something magical. Because you can't control it. You can't steer it. You can only give it and just hope it was worthwhile. And I think that's what Jesus was talking about, finding ourselves, is that when we let go, when we put that out there with the best of intentions, not knowing if it's right or wrong, good or bad, that eventually that will come back again. So I had a couple more. I think sometime too, one of the things the Scripture tells us, and I think it's always good to remind us, even though we may retreat from God, we may retreat from our families, we may retreat from our problems, our understanding from the Scriptures is that God never leaves us. Even though God maybe sometimes gets frustrated with us, God never leaves us. We lose ourselves at times, but God knows exactly where we are at all times. And I think it's one of the reasons the Scriptures often come back again and again to the idea that you are known by God. God knows you. God knows who you are and how you are. I thought this was just a lovely little quote to close with. We lose ourselves in the things we love, but we find ourselves there too. Thank you. Happy Father's Day to all the men who are hiding in their man cave this morning.
Thank you, Allan. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, Dave. Thanks for joining us every week. It's great music. And my father took me to the Apostolic Church down the road, Gateway now. So this is a song I learned there, and all those songs stuck with me all these years. So, Like a Shepherd. 1, 2, 3. Like a father feeds his children, like a shepherd leads his flock, the Lord will always guide us and show us where to walk. And in times when we have plenty, and in times when we have none, He is our provider, and His mercy never stops. Like a shepherd He leads us, like a father He feeds us, from the morning to the evening, till the sun rise again. Like a shepherd he leads us, like a father he feeds us. He is the great I am. As we come into his presence, confessing him as Lord, his Holy Spirit leads us, he feeds us by his word. We're seated at his table, partaking of his love, children of his kingdom, and purchased by his blood. Like a shepherd he leads us, like a father he feeds us, from the morning to the evening, till the sunrise again. Like a shepherd he leads us, like a father he feeds us. He is the great I am. 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 Oh, he is the great I am. He is the great I am.
We've gone, how long?
100 days. 100 days.
100 days?
I heard that.
Without those guys ever getting any applause, so I think we should applaud for them this morning. Because I got to tell you, they've been working really, really hard, and I know everybody has appreciated, but I have really appreciated the company, actually, every Sunday of knowing that these guys were going to be here. And you don't see what they do off camera to me, kind of all these mugs that I get and things like that. So it's been great. It's been great. And the quality of music is just spectacular. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Our pastoral prayer is in the bulletin, if you would turn there or on the screens. Let us pray. People of God, look around and see the faces that we know and love, neighbors and friends, sisters and brothers, a community of kindred hearts. People of God, look around and see the faces of those we hardly know, strangers, visitors, forgotten friends, the ones who need an outstretched hand. People of God, look around and see the images of God assembled here, in me, in you, and each of us. God's Spirit shines for all to see. People of God, come. O God, as a gentle rain soaks the earth, may your peace and love fall upon us, bringing growth and life. Soak into our innermost being, quiet all that makes us anxious. Help us to linger in your presence, and send us out refreshed to carry your peace to others. Amen. And let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So before we sing our closing hymn, as far as I understand, we'll be open again next week under the same conditions. I think, Dave, is that what our plan is? So this is the way it's going to be, and for the next little while until we're told otherwise. And people at home who don't feel comfortable coming, that is great. It's perfectly fine. We're just open for the people who feel they want to come in and be part of worship. That's great. At home, you're part of worship. I'm happy to see that online our numbers are staying up around 200 a week as how many views we get. So that means from Muscatov at Harbor to out in Victoria Island, as far as I'm aware, people are watching us, which I think is incredibly cool. So we're happy to have you with us. And again, I want to thank Dave and Dan for the incredible music they provide every week. I want to thank Alice for helping us today, Courtney for all the background stuff that she does every week, and for Dave, who's helping us with the sound, and Andrea, who's our resident videographer. So yeah, maybe give them all a hand. We never ever get a chance with all that. And we're just trying to make plans for the summer. I would like to take some vacation. As much as I, get up every day, can't wait to do this. I would love to take some vacation, but we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do over the summer. So my plan is to be away in August, but I think we're gonna figure out some way of at least keeping services online. We're not sure how we're gonna do that yet, or how exactly we're going to do that, but we will do something. So you'll get lots of information beforehand. As far as I know, from now on, though, till August, we'll be meeting like this. So that's what the plan is right now. So our final hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Great is thy faithfulness, God our Creator. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, through mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, ever true. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses were above, joined with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, ever to me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope tomorrow. Wondrous the portion thy blessings provide. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness ever to me.
Now may the peace of God, which surpasses all human understanding, keep watch over our minds and hearts, bodies, and souls, this day and forever.
Go now in peace, never be afraid. God will go with you each hour of every day. Go now in faith, steadfast, strong, and true. Know God will guide you in all you do. Grow now in love and show you believe. Reach out to others so all the world can see. God will be there, guiding with God's love. Go